Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mudlick Creek Garage. Today we are going to be diagnosing the issue with this 2011 Polaris RZR XP 900. So the owner was driving down the road and all of a sudden it let out a poof of white smoke and it quit running and the engine seems to be locked up. So we started by removing the spark plugs to try to figure out what's going on, but unfortunately one has broken off in the cylinder. So I'm believing it's going to be a head gasket because this engine is a fairly fresh engine. So here we go. First step here in doing anything to the engine is going to be pull your seats out. We're going to pull our seats out to gain access to the bolts that allow us to remove the back plastic. They are all going to be T27 Torx. So I'm going to get all of that removed and we will be back. So I'd like to go over the proper way to diagnose this. Your first step, you're going to want one of these bad boys. This is going to have every sort of spec you're going to need to know. Has how-to instructions, whole 9 yards. Any average Joe with a decent set of tools can fix this machine in their own garage with the knowledge in this book. But general mechanic knowledge here. First thing you're going to want to look for, you're going to want to pull the plugs and you're going to want to see if the engine spins over. Obviously, this engine does not spin over and there's a plug stuck in the cylinder. So that's going to tell me our issue's probably on the passenger side where the plug was stuck in the cylinder, being that the driver's side's out and it still will not turn over. So next, you're going to want to, if your plugs are both out, you're going to want to do a compression check and a leak down check. That would tell you which cylinder is having issues and, where your issue is going to lie. So being that we can't spin this one over, we're just going to tear it down. So pull the air box, pull the snorkels, and we'll get the valve cover off and we'll see if there's any carnage in there. Okay, so now that we have the intake off, we can start to see part of the story. Number one, you can see dirt in here along the intake boots. This hose clamp on the outside was not tight, thus allowing dirt to get into the engine. Hopefully that hasn't hurt our cylinder rings. But the other part of the story, more importantly, you can see moisture in the passenger side cylinder. That is going to be coolant that has gotten into the cylinder and has blown back out the intake. This is starting to look like a head gasket failure as I had predicted. So we will get the valve cover off and then I will check back up with you guys. Now that the valve cover's off, we can see that it is definitely not a head gasket, although there is coolant everywhere. So if you look closely, you will see that this valve is no longer in contact with the cam. So it has dropped a valve into the cylinder, causing catastrophic damage. I don't know if you all will be able to see down in there, but there's a valve wadded up inside of the head. So this is not going to be a good day. Let's get the cams out and we will pull the head off. So we have the head off, and as you can see, the fate of this engine is not looking very good. So we could kind of start seeing this when we pulled the intake and we seen a piece of metal sitting in there, but you never want to make assumptions until you're in there. Well, here we are. So there is pieces of valve and keeper and holes in the piston. It's just not a good day. this engine essentially is done for. Potentially, we could get away with just doing a top end. It really depends on what that rod looks like when we get it apart. If that rod isn't beat up and banged up, we can just throw a new piston on it. But here's where it gets interesting. Let me get you over to the head over here on the table. So don't mind the mess. All the parts that are going to go back in this machine will get cleaned. So here on the head, we have catastrophic failure. And let me go grab my light here so you can get a better view. So we have all 4 valves fail. Now, I will let you guys know this is a fairly fresh engine with a fairly fresh valve job done by myself, and I'm not a professional, but I've done quite a few and never had an issue. So the interesting thing here is if we take a look at this valve, it snapped clean on the stem, and there's no carnage in there. So these valves were new OEM Polaris valves, and we did find the other stub piece to it here. And this valve, other than being beat up from being in the cylinder, does not look bent at all. So the theory I'm devising here, because all 4 failed at once, all the keepers were found in the top, some of the keepers even were still intact. They hadn't even left their valve. I'm believing this factory Polaris valve just broke. Maybe a manufacturing defect killed it, because it's very odd that it's a clean break here. The stem is not bent. I can push it straight through, no issue, no resistance. I'm thinking this busted, fell into the cylinder, and just wrecked a whole bunch of havoc and destroyed this brand new engine. So I'm gonna have the customer, or my buddy, get in touch with the people that sold him the valves, and we are going to go from there, because yeah, this ain't very good. Not good at all. So there we are, guys. I have this here RZR all torn down, diagnosed. Unfortunately, it happened to be the worst case scenario. I did want to mention that over here, it also has a busted valve guide. So I don't know if that played a role, but yeah, this is a tough one. We'll have to see what we end up doing, because like I said, these pistons are brand spanking new. I mean, this engine has probably 150, 200 miles on this rebuild. I had enough that if something was going to fail that was an assembly error, it would have failed by now. All the head bolts were tight, whole 9 yards. But so, all right, everyone. Next video, we will be fixing this. Probably, maybe. I gotta get a hold of my buddy and see what he wants to do. But for now, guys, thank you for watching. If you liked what you've seen, please hit like, consider subscribing, and thank you for watching Muddle Creek Garage.